Cousins leading his Vikings into Chicago. Last week got a lot of help from Dalvin Cook, 27 totes, 205, 2 touchdowns. They had a big lead and then held on. Dalvin Cook went over his props last week. What about this week? What are the props, including where is Cousins on the board? Okay, Todd Fuhrman is in. Todd and I will give you the props in terms of the first, or actually the originally scheduled Monday night game. It's the second of the two, but it's the one that we always knew that we were going to have, and that is the Vikings in Chicago against the Bears. Kirk Cousins, 1.5 passing touchdowns. Now, look, if you want to go over, you got to pay a premium. Basically, they're saying we think he's going to throw 2. Is there value in taking the plus and going under, or do you think that even though they're going to make you pay a little price, you got to hammer that over?
You know, oftentimes, EK, there's a lot of value going under because you do have to factor in potential injury. You're obviously not going to accumulate stats if you're not out there on the football field. But the Bears don't bring much in the way of pass rush. And when you look at the Minnesota Vikings, their O-line should be healthier with Christian Darrisaw in the fold. Kirk Cousins has thrown 2 touchdown passes or more in 6 straight games. He's done it in 7 of 8. And against this depleted secondary, I think Minnesota is going to take shots early and often. It's not just relying on Cousins to be throwing inside the red zone. I think he may have a touchdown, maybe 2, coming from plus territory as well. Look for KJ Osborne or Justin Jefferson to shake free. I'm going over 1.5 touchdowns and willing to lay the price to do so.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing as well. I like the over. I don't like paying this price. I wouldn't bet it, but forced, I would take the over, even though it's a hefty price. Yeah, you got a guy who does it every week playing against the front. That's really where they're susceptible in the secondary. They got guys out with COVID and all the other stuff. Plus, I know Jefferson's going to get one. So it's just a matter of somebody else going to get one, and it could be Jefferson with 2. Justin Fields, passing yards is continuing to drop. He's 210. It was 210.5. That's now 205.5. So it just keeps falling down and down and down. You know I like the rushing attempts with Fields, but what do you want to do with 205.5?
I'm going to go under this passing number, EK. It's a little bit scary when you look at Fields and the maturation we've seen over the last couple of games. In the last 3 weeks, he's actually started games. He's only finished 2 of those. And in the 2 he did, he went over this number against the Steelers in prime time and went over that number in prime time against the Green Bay Packers as well. But this is a little bit of a different ask. I think Minnesota is going to be able to pin their ears back and come after Justin Fields sitting in the pocket, knowing that the Bears' offensive line is anything but 100%. Matt Nagy back calling plays instead of Bill Lazor, which tends for me to believe that it's going to be a lot more conservative, dinking and dunking. I just don't see chunk yardage coming at any point for Fields, which is going to make it an uphill battle. And much like the sentiment you echoed earlier, I think his rushing yards or maybe even attempts that you're bullish on make a little bit more sense than going over with Fields' passing total today. All
right, Dalvin Cook total yards, it just keeps climbing. I mean, look, you can see why. We mentioned last week he was over 200, had a bunch of opportunities, had a couple of touchdowns, but they're not giving it away. 113.5 total yards. What do you want to do here with Dalvin Cook? I'm going to go under.
Yeah, and I'm going to be right there with you. I'm going under the total as well. I wonder about Cook's workload in this particular spot, because if you're an offensive coordinator and you're going to come out and attack a defense that's most vulnerable in its secondary, why give your workhorse back a huge amount of carries? I know he comes into this contest off extended rest, but you're running it back next week on short rest against a tenacious Los Angeles Rams defensive line. So I think Cook's workload could be reduced a little bit. He's still going to get his 12 to 15 touches, and naturally, if he springs a big one, he could go over. But I also not sure how the Vikings are going to deploy him in the receiving game. When you look at Dalvin Cook and his past matchups against the Chicago Bears, since they've had Roquan Smith in their linebacking core, Cook has averaged less than 20 yards receiving in those contests. I think this is where you're buying the rumor and you're selling the news. Everyone high on Cook in the wake of that performance against the Steelers. I'm going to go the other way and be in lockstep with you under the total.
On this show, we call it the Stephon Diggs effect, where last year the bookmakers just couldn't make it high enough, right? Every week they kept raising him up, and every week he just kept going over and over and over and over and over. And it was just one of those things where we're getting hammered. Justin Jefferson is sort of in that category. I mean, a couple of guys. Cooper Kupp has been in that category where you've had these wide receivers that have been a runaway train here. Justin Jefferson just keeps climbing. When we started the show, it was 93.5. It's up to 97.5. At what point are you going to go the other way? I mean, I don't want any part of 97.5, but I'm not going under. I got to go over, right? Where are you headed?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a prop that you're either making a case to go over or you're staying away from it completely. 93.5, a little bit easier task. 97.5, I'll lean ever so slightly over for the main reason that Justin Jefferson will have the most favorable matchup today against the secondary that he's had all season long. And when you look at his numbers last week against the Steelers, I know he didn't exceed odds makers' expectations, but that was partly because of game flow. I mean, the Vikings were up 29-0. There was no need to continue to utilize their workhorse. If he kept up the same rate we saw in the opening drive, I mean, Jefferson would have had 150 by halftime. I think the Vikings won't make that same mistake here. There's going to be chunk yardage plays to be had downfield, and you're finally seeing the Vikings force feed the horse. Maybe they're listening to Pete's advice about getting the best receiver in football the ball. I'm going to go over 97.5 with a slight lean. Just because on principle, I'm not going under with this player.
He didn't even play well last week. He had drops, and he still had an unbelievable game. Like, over, and more over there. All right, what's your best prop from this game? Anywhere on the board, what do you like the best?
We're going to go right back to Justin Jefferson. And when you look at his longest reception in this spot, it's 28.5 yards. I'm going to go over because I do think there's going to be some potential for busted coverage if communication breaks down for the Bears. I think you're going to see Cousins come out with a deep shot or two early on. I know KJ Osborne against the Steelers turned into a little bit more of the burner on the fly routes. But with Adam Thielen still out of the mix, I think Justin Jefferson can operate over that deep middle. All it takes is a missed tackle. And I really believe this is extremely manageable. When you look at his recent results, he's gone over this number in 4 out of the last 6 games. Let's make it 5 out of 7. I think he's got to catch for at least 30 yards in his arsenal.
I'm going to go with Darnell Mooney over 3.5 in terms of catches. No Allen Robinson. This is sort of the security blanket. I only have to get to 4. He's clearly their best option. If they're trailing, they're definitely going to get him the ball. I'll take him over 3.5. I also like Justin Jefferson over the rushing attempts, which is 5.5. You see there. There we go. Todd and I in lockstep because, well, I try to follow what he does. He's really smart.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.